Lesson 3 of Unit 5. Today we are looking at adding positives and negatives. Our essential question today is, how are the universe of zero, which we've already learned about, the t-chart, which we've already seen, and the number line, which we've already worked with, alike when adding integers? All right, so let's take a little investigative look at finding patterns. In the column at the left, you could either pause the video and try finding patterns on your own, or we can work together. So if you'd like to try them now, pause now. So 5 plus 5 is the general rule that it's 10. We all know that from elementary school. 5 plus 4 is 9, and 5 plus 3 is 8. And you can see there's already a pattern forming here as we go down. And you can also see that there are 5s all the way down here. Now what is changing is plus 5, plus 4, plus 3, plus 2, plus 1, plus 0. And after 0, we add negatives. And that's what we're learning about adding integers today. So what happens if we follow this pattern down? We have 5 plus 2 is 7, 5 plus 1 is 6, 5 plus 0 is 5. And you can see that pattern continues to go down, dropping by 1. So 5 plus negative 1 ought to be 4. And 5 plus negative 2 ought to be 3. And 5 plus negative 3 ought to be 2. And it just keeps on going down. Now when we get to this one right here, 5 plus negative 5, you're familiar with already. Those are opposites. And that equals 0. And that follows the pattern perfectly. Now after 0, we have 5 plus negative 6. Now we have more negatives than we do positives. And so that pattern continues. After 0 would be negative 1, and then negative 2. And it would continue. Let's take a look at another pattern, but this time we're starting with negatives. So you see negatives all the way down. And what we see on the other side is we're adding 7 and then adding 6. We're dropping 1. Just like above, we drop, drop, drop. Okay, so let's develop a pattern here. First of all, when we look at negative 5 plus 7, we might wonder, what is that? Well, there's a clue right here. 5 plus negative 7, there's more negatives than there were positives, and that's a negative 2. Well, now we have more positives than we have negatives. So what's the answer? The answer is 2. All right. Now we have negative 5 plus positive 6. We have more positives than we have negatives, so we have 1. And you can see that pattern start to develop on the right side. Negative 5 plus positive 5 are the opposites. So that equals 0. And negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. You can see this pattern is still going. It's dropping. Negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. And it continues to work its way down. Now here's a unique one. Negative 5 plus 0. It doesn't do anything to the negative 5, so it remains negative 5. And negative 5 plus a negative 1. You got to just trust that pattern, continue down. 5 negatives plus 1 more negatives, it's got to give you 6 negatives. And then now we have 7 negatives, and we have negative 8, and we have negative 9, and we have negative 10. So as you're doing this, look for what the numbers say and work your pattern down. All right, so we discovered some things there. We encountered adding positives. We encountered adding negatives together. We've encountered positives to negatives and negatives to positives. And so we're going to take what we've learned into this next part here. It says, building expressions, we already know what an expression is, without equal signs, with algebra tiles. We'll find out what those are. Equivalent amounts of positive and negative signs equal zeros. That is something we are very familiar with. We know that. We're going to be practicing that today. After pairing them together, count the leftover signs for the answer. All right, so this is how it works. This is the universe of zero, it's already been populated with 4 positives. See the 4 positive signs? Those are called algebra tiles. Then it says to add 7 more positives into the circle. So we'll add 7 more positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we're looking to pair positives and negatives together. There are no negatives. And so we're going to count how many positives are left over. And after counting, we find out that there are 11. All right, let's go to the next one. The next one says the word or right in the middle, because there's 2 ways to write it and they mean the same thing. The first way you can write it is 4 plus -7, or you can write 4 plus -7 with parentheses around it. Now you're going to see this way more often because they don't want you to see the plus -7 and get kind of confused with the look of it. But they do mean the same thing. All right, so let's try it out. Let's use this bottom one. We're going to populate the circle with 4, and there they are. And then we're going to add 7 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, now we're going to look for making zeros, just like we had in our past lessons. We have a 0 here, a 0 here, here, and here. 4 zeros. Well, what do we have left over? We have 3 negatives, and that's the answer to this problem. -3. All right. The third example, we have 4 negatives, so we're going to populate the circle with 4 negatives. And then we're going to add 7 positives to the circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we're going to pair them up to find our zeros. We have this one. We can even double them together. And you can see that we have some remainder signs, and those are positives. So this is equal to 3. And now we have this or again, because there's 2 ways to write it. You've already seen this. We're going to work with the bottom one. We're going to populate the circle with 4 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to add 7 negatives to the circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can see there are no positive signs in there, so we cannot combine them to make zeros. So we're going to count how many negatives we have, and we have -11. All right, so that's how you use the universe of 0 for those. Now we also have the option of using a t-chart. So the t-chart's right down here, and we're going to use the same problems from up above. Before we begin, let's look over these t-charts. On the left, we have a negative sign, and on the right, we have a positive sign. Okay? We, here at ASI, put the negative sign on the left and the positive sign on the right because when we have number lines, as you remember, the negatives are on the left and the positives are on the right. And that's why we do it that way. Okay, so let's start. What are we going to populate with the t-chart with? Well, 4 positives. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to add 7 more positives. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we kind of just add all of those together, and we find out that we have 11 positives. And that's the answer, 11. Now, we don't use algebra tiles like I just did. We use numbers instead. So on this next one, up above, you can see that it's 4 plus -7. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put 4 on the positive side because it's a positive number. And then we're going to add 7 negatives. Well, those are negatives, so we put the 7 on the negative side. And you can see what signs do we have more of. We have more negative signs than we do positive signs. And if you can imagine, in the circle, these 4 positive signs are going to join together with these 4 negative signs and make a 0. So if we bring this across, and subtract these 4 positive signs and take away 4 of the negative signs, we're going to have 3 left over. And 3 is on the negative side. So this answer is -3. Okay, let's try this again. Up above, we have -4, so we will populate our t-chart with 4 negatives with the number 4 on the negative side. And then we're going to add 7 positives. Positives will go on the positive side. And you can see up in the t-chart, these 4 negatives joined together with these 4 positives are now zeros, and there's 3 left over. So we have more positive signs on our t-chart, and so we're going to choose to send this across and subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3. That 3 is located on the positive side, so our answer is +3. And then our last circle here, we're going to populate the t-chart with 4 negatives. And then we're going to add 7 more negatives. So add 7 more negatives. They're negatives, so they stay on the negative side. And since they're all negatives, what did we do up here? We counted them all together. So we're going to add these together, and we get 11. So the answer is negative 11, because it's on the negative side. So pay attention where you finish. This is positive. This is negative. All right, that's the universe of 0. That's the t-charts, and now we have the number line. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We'll take this problem like we've been working with, 4 plus 7. We always want to start at 0. So always when you're working with number lines, look for the number 0. All right, let's start at 4. We'll start at 0 and go to 4. Okay, got twisted up there. So start here, always start at 0 and go out to 4. So make an arrow all the way to 4. Okay, and then we're going to add 7 to this line. So from this line, we're going to add 7. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we should end up at 11 because that is the answer, 11. So that's how it works. Are you familiar with that? Well, let's use some negatives then. Start at 0. We always start at 0. And it says go to 4. So we're going to go out to 4 all the way to here. Little arrow. And then we're going to add 7 negatives. Well, to add negatives, we wouldn't be going forward as we just did. We're going to have to go backwards to add negatives because the negatives are left. So we want to add more negatives, so we got to go left. So we'll turn this around from here and go 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And where did we arrive? Put your arrow. We arrived at -3. And that is the answer that we've learned before. Okay, let's do the next one. We're starting at, or we're going out to -4. So we always start at 0. I'm going to go this way to -4. Put your arrow, your stop line. Then we're going to add 7 positives. To add positives, we got to go back to the right. So here we go from this line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we arrived at 3. And our last one, we're going to go out to -4 from 0. Here's 0. Out to -4. Put your arrow and your stop line. And then add 7 negatives. So which way do we go when we add negatives? We go towards the negatives, so left. So from here, we're going to go 7 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we arrived at -11. So you just got to see the universe of 0, the t-charts, and the number lines in action. And they all come up with the same answers. So that's how it works. And now we're going to get into adding negative and positive rational numbers. But we're going to use some of the tools we just learned to make it easier for ourselves. Okay? So this very first one, Okay, this is 5 and 1/10. Make sure you're saying your numbers correctly. Plus negative 5 and 1/10. Now those are opposites, and you know that opposites always equal 0. So that was a nice and easy one. On B, when we're adding, you have to remember this too from elementary school, when we're adding, we are looking specifically at the denominators, and these denominators match. And so that's going to make it really nice for us. We know that since the denominators match, the denominator for the answer is going to be a 4. But what's the numerator up on top? Well, here it is. It is 1 plus negative 3. What's 1 plus negative 3? Well, we have more negatives than we have positives. We can use a T-chart. We put the positive 1 on the positive side. We put the negative 3 on the negative side. And we can see we have only one positive sign where we have 3 negative signs. Well, in a universe of 0, if you imagine, you would join one of the positive signs with one of those negative signs, and you would have what left over? Well, we know that we can send this one over and subtract. And that's 2 negatives. So our answer is negative 2 as our numerator. And you also know from elementary school that this can be simplified. Negative 2 over 4 is the same as negative 1/2. It's crammed in the box. I do apologize for that, but you got to fit it in. Now we're talking about money. Everybody wants to talk about money, so we're talking about it. We have negative 50. That's a debt. You owe someone $50, and then you have $75.25. So you got to pay them back, and what are we going to have? So you can see here that we have more positives than we have negatives. And so you know you're going to end up with money in your pocket. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, I would say go back to the T-chart. You don't have to draw a number line. These are large numbers. In a universe of 0, that would be really tough to do. So into the T-chart we go. Okay, we put 50 on this side, and we put 75.25 on this side, $75.25. You can see that 50 is less than 75.25 as far as signs go. So we're going to send it across, and then we subtract. I do apologize for the room. That's tough. So our answer is $25.25 left over. Okay, this one we have 9 plus negative 10.5, and we're doing a whole number plus a mixed number. Now you can see that there are more negative signs, negative 10.5 negative signs versus the positive signs. How many more are there? Well, you could simply just take the 9 and the negative 10 and say 9 positives and 9 negatives would make zeros, and you would have 1 negative left over. So that's negative 1.5. There's other ways to do that would take longer, but that we just use some logic and reasoning there to process that. This next one, we have fractions and decimals. Well, if you know how to read your decimals, it makes it really easy. This is 9/100ths plus, and this is negative 7, and 7 is the one in the 100ths place, so negative 7/100ths. If you know how to say your decimals, you're actually saying the fraction out loud. 7/100ths. All right, so we have more positives, 9/100ths, than negatives, 7/100ths. And so our denominators match, and that's a good thing. So we can add the numerators. So 9 plus negative 7. You can use a T-chart. You can use a circle. Let's use a circle. We haven't used one of those. Circles are kind of tough because they take a lot of room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 7 negatives down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll stop there. So we'll circle 7 negatives and 7 Oops. 7 positives, and you can see we have 2 left over. So the answer is 2 100ths. Now that can be simplified, so we're going to divide it by 2, and that's going to be 1 50th. Okay, on F, we have different denominators. Okay, so this may be a reminder to you, or maybe you struggled through it. So let's learn this now. 7 and 3, what can they both go into? Well, here's some numbers 3 can go into. It can go into 6, it can go into 9, it can go into 12, 15, it can go into 18, it can go into 21. And that's the first number that 7 can also go into. So we're going to write 21 and 21. Now, 7 times what is 21? Well, 7 times 3. That's a time sign, a little dot. So 6 times 3 is 18. And 3 times what is 21? Well, that's times 7. So 2 times 7 is 14. Now let's put everything else in play. We have this negative sign up here. We don't want to lose that. And we have this plus sign right here. All right, now our denominators match. And we can add the top. We have 18 negatives plus 14 positives. There are more negatives than there are positives. How many more negatives are there than positives? We can simply subtract. 18 take away 14 would leave us 4 negatives. So negative 4 21st. G. Back to decimals. Remember what we learned up above? When we have negatives plus negatives gives you more negatives. All right, let's take a look at it. All right, let's use a T-chart. We have negative 2 and 7/10 plus negative 6 and 5/10. Line up the decimals. They're both negatives, so they belong on the negative side, and add them together. That is 9 and 2/10. But it is negative because it's on the negative side, so don't forget the sign. Negative 9 and 2/10. All right, now this next one, H. Negative 8/10 plus negative 1/5. All right, I like changing decimals into fractions. They're just a whole lot easier. That's negative 8/10. If you learn to say them, you're going to say the fraction out loud. Plus negative 1/5. Now our denominators do not match, but it's an easier one than usual because 5 can go into 10. So we'll keep negative 8/10. And we will make this one go up. There are other ways to do this. I could have dropped this one down to a 5. Oops, I did not do it. Let me fix that. Drop that to a 10. Okay, so 5 times 2 is 10, so 1 times 2 is 2. Make sure we don't lose this negative sign there. Now our denominators match, and now we can add them. All right, so what is negative 8 plus negative 2? Well, negatives plus negatives gives us more negatives. Negative 8 and negative 2 gives us a total of 10 negatives over 10. Now this can be simplified. 10 divided by 10 is 1, and that negative comes over for the ride. It's negative 1. All right, we learned a ton, and it is now time for the you-dos. You may flip your paper back and forth for the universe of zeros, for the T-charts, and for the number line. I'd like you to pause the video and try all of the universe of zeros on your own first. Pause now. All right, here we are with the universe of zeros. You can see the answers across the board. We have negative 2, we have negative 10, 1, and 0. All right, go ahead and pause the video after you got those all figured out and try the T-chart line. Pause now. Okay, you can see my answers on the t-charts: -6, 7, -9, and 0. Just pay attention to make sure you add the sign on your answers. You could, do everything right and then forget that 6 is on the negative side and not include the negative sign, and that would make it wrong. So be careful of that. Also, at the very last one, it didn't matter which side you moved the 8 to, you subtract it, and either side you would have gotten a 0 if you moved it this way too. So either way you go, you're going to get a 0 when they are opposites. All right, go ahead and pause the video and now try the number line. Pause now. Okay, you're back, and take a look at the answers from the number line. We have -12, 12, -4, and 4. Now, if you got any of those wrong, please examine your number line and fix it. Now, if you've had any issues with the universe of 0, the t-chart, or the number line, you will want to get a little extra help from your teacher. So make sure you are asking questions in class. Do not let this pass by. You will be using this daily for the rest of the year, all the way through high school and beyond. All right, so let's take a look at this last one. It says, let x equal 3 and let y equal -8. All right, what would the expressions x plus y be and y plus x be equal to? All right, so let's find where we are on the number line. We can see down here that we have 0, and the positives are always on the right side. So positives over here. Got to spell it correctly. Hold on. And the negatives are always on. Did I say left side? I think I might have said left side. Positives are on the right side, and negatives are on the left side. Sorry. Okay. So it says up here that x is 3. So we're going to label this as x. And then y is -8. We're going to label -8 as y. We're going to do the very first one. I'll highlight it in green. And we're going to bring the green one to the left over here. We're going to say x plus y. All right, what was x? What are we going to put inside these parentheses? For x, x is 3. And what is y? It is -8. All right, so what do we do? Well, we can use the universe of 0. We can use a t-chart. We can use a number line. We can even use logic. Logic would tell us that there are more negatives than there are positives. So we know the answer is going to be a negative answer. However, these 3 positives are going to take away 3 of the negatives to make a universe of 0. Well, when you take 3 away from 8, what do you get? You have 5 leftover negatives. So we use logic there, reasoning, to do without the universe of 0, without the t-chart, without the number line. Now, if you can do that, you're welcome to do that. But if you need a universe of 0 or you need a t-chart, I would say definitely use it. All right, let's go down to the other side. I'll highlight the other problem, y plus x, on the other side. So y plus x. All right, so our y is -8. So this is different than the other one. It was 3 first. This is -8 plus 3. All right, we can see here that we have more negatives than we have positives. And it's the same problem as the one we did before. So in addition, do you remember this from elementary school? We have the commutative property. And in elementary school, you learn that 1 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 1. In addition, it works. In addition. All right, so the answer is the same. It is -5. So it didn't matter x plus y or y plus x. All right, let's take a look at our last part of the lesson before you get on to your Delta Math. adding positive and negative investigation. Okay, so same signs. What does that mean? Well, that means you're either adding positives plus positives. That's what that means, positive sign plus positive signs. Or it might mean negative signs plus negative signs. Those are same signs, situations. When we add positives plus positives, we always get positives. And when we add negatives plus negatives, we always get negatives. And so our rule here, our investigation, we want to write something. When we're working with same signs, we get basically the same thing. So you might even say positives plus positives are always positive. Negatives plus negatives are always negatives. In both cases, we're getting more of the signs. And we saw that in our circles. Negatives plus more negatives gave us more negatives. We also saw that in our T-charts. Positives plus positives gave us more positives. We also even saw it in our number lines. Put 0 here. We went out positives, we went out farther, more positives, and we had more positives. But what about this other one? Different signs. We have two unique situations. We can either see positives plus negatives. Oops, oh, different color here. Positives plus negatives, or we could see negatives plus positives. Okay, so those are different signs. So this one was unique. It depended on which one had more signs. Remember in the universe of 0, if you had more positive signs, it was a positive answer. But if you had more negative signs, then it was a negative answer. The same thing happened on the T-chart. Okay, if you had more negative signs than positive signs, it was going to be a negative answer. And if you had more positives, it was going to be a positive. So it depends. All right. The number line was unique because we could go this way and then you could go back that way. Or you could have started to the left and came back the other direction. All right, so you're adding mixed signs, different signs. So what are we going to write? We're going to write positives plus negatives equals, well, it depends. And we're also going to write negatives plus positives, and that, it depends. What does it depend on? It depends, okay? It depends on who has more signs. Who has more signs? And then once you know that you're going to be subtracting, or subtracting that one negative with that one positive, or subtracting these two negatives with these two positives. All right, so if you are confused by any of this, please ask your teacher and make sure you get it cleared up before you get back on your assignment.